So the vision of the Opportunity Act is not that each program that's mandated to work together change their whole design, but that collectively you change your design. So you leverage each other's strengths. There are plenty of people who come into the one-stops who need GEDs or adult basic education or literacy. There are plenty of people who come into the one-stops who are disabled and who might need assistive technology or other kinds of supports. Probably if you mapped the federal funding that was attached to people coming into the one-stop, you'd find that at least half of them were in a food stamp program, a TANF program, vocational rehabilitation, adult literacy, or some other kind of support system, whether it's funded by the federal, the state, or the local government. And so the idea is, might be worth thinking about how to design together for the customer. So let me spend a few minutes talking about designing for the customer, because that's my obsession. I've started thinking about some years ago better ways that we could design our programs. Better than reading a law and saying, okay, we need to do this, 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 and this. Okay, all right, you do that. All right, we'll put some standard operating procedures together. Okay, let's open the door. How could we design a program that really met the needs of the person who walked through the door? And I started going out and looking around, and there actually is a whole field called human-centered design. There are people all over the world who are actually working on how to design with the customer in the center. So I started looking around for where those people were, and lo and behold, there's a company in San Francisco where I am based called IDEO. And IDEO started out as a design company that designed products, like the first mouse for the Apple computer, and toothbrushes, and medicine bottles, and bicycles. And they figured out after a while that the process that they were using to design products could also be used to design services. So for example, Kaiser was very interested in improving their customer experience, their patient experience. And they put beautiful paintings on the walls and little nice steps on the floor to tell you how to get to the pharmacy or the information booth. But their customer experience was still not, their patient experience still was not kind of where they wanted it. And so they hired IDEO to come in and really look at their services through the eyes of the customer. And so literally, one of their staff came in with a little video camera right next to his glasses and videoed the whole experience. And at the end of that experience, everybody sat down and watched the video, and mostly what that guy was looking at were crappy ceiling tiles. Because most of his experience was lying flat on his back, looking up at the ceiling. And so, what Kaiser did was that they fixed that. And I will tell you my personal story, which is part of the reason I'm so obsessed with this. I am a Kaiser member and had to have a series of tests a number of years ago, 2 years ago, and went into this big room with a big scary machine, and I had to lie down on this metal table. And I lay down on the table, and I looked up at the ceiling, and there were these huge panels that looked like skylights. They had blue sky and clouds and trees, and I just burst into tears. And the technicians, they were like, "No, it's going to be okay. This isn't going to hurt." And like, I'm not crying about the procedure. I'm crying about the ceiling. And it was just so remarkable because it really felt. I mean, it did make it better. It made it better for me. So human-centered design is a practice that people can learn. That's about really using empathy for your customer as a starting place. Starting not just with listening to customers, but also watching what they do. Another one of my favorite examples is they were designing pill bottles, and they like to work with extreme users, so the people at both ends of the extreme. So someone who's a NASCAR race driver and someone who's 85 years old who drives on Sundays. They met with a woman. She was 85 years old. She had very severe arthritis in both of her hands, and they said, "So what's your experience opening pill bottles?" She's like, "Not a problem." She thought that was a little odd. So they just said, "Well, can we just kind of follow you around?" And she would come home from the pharmacy with her pill bottles, and she'd walk in the kitchen, and she had a meat slicer set up, and she would just slice the top of the bottle off, and then she had little baby food jars, and she would just put the pills in the jar, right? So asking someone what they think is great, and talking to them, and observing them is even better. And observing the experience of the customer through their eyes is better yet again. So we hired IDEO to do a couple of projects for us. The first one was that, this was a few years ago, there were a lot of people coming into our offices who were long-term unemployed. They were older, they were more professional, they typically had had a job for a long time, they didn't know how to look for work. It was a very different population than the population that many of the one-stops had traditionally served. And so we hired IDEO to do a really quick project with us to look at what kinds of services they would need that are different. And I had this theory that unemployment was sort of like the stages of dying. You kind of this anger and denial, and I was completely wrong. But they went out and they talked to people who were long-term unemployed. They talked to people who served the long-term unemployed. They followed some folks around and listened, talked to their families. And one of the insights that they had was that people who come into the one-stop, pretty much everybody, probably every one of your students as well, their emotions really matter. And where they are emotionally really makes a difference to where they need to go. So for example, some people who were long-term unemployed, they were coming into a career center not because they wanted a career or career guidance. Their rent was due and they didn't have any money. They didn't even need a job, they needed money. And they were panicked. And that's really different than someone who comes in who's just stalled. They send out hundreds of resumes, they're all online, they've never gotten anything back, they don't know what to do. And that's really different from someone who maybe is younger, earlier on in their career, they got laid off, they haven't been able to find a job, but they never really like their job anyway, and they want to know what else is out there, what other kinds of skills what skills do I have right now could I bring into some other kind of industry? They're kind of wandering around. So those emotional states, whether you're panicked or stalled or wandering, we came up with, I think, a lexicon of 6 different emotional states, could then drive our behavior as a workforce system. What if we, instead of what we usually do, which is come into a workshop and we're going to tell you about all the services that we have. We have resume writing skills, we have career exploration, we have workshops on how to use LinkedIn, we have, computer skills workshops. Imagine in that room, you've got panicked people, stalled people, angry people, people who are in serious distress with all sorts of other issues as a result of being unemployed for over a year. So as a result of this work that we did, we had a couple of the one-stops who were participating in our effort go back home and completely redesign their system. And but they do now what they call speed dating. And they've got all the right partners, so they've got financial counselors, they have people who can help with resume writing if people need that. They have people who represent all of the different partners that have developed in their one-stop, and if people need literacy skills. So they've got all of these different services, but it's just real fast, and you just go to the people that you need to go to. And it's completely changed the experience of the customers who walk in there. We did a second project where we looked at overall the experiences that people had when they walked into a one-stop. And a couple of my favorite stories, one was up in Oregon. They walked into the one-stop, there was a counter at the back of the room, and there was a stanchion, and it had a big red hand and the word "stop" below it. And that's where people stood on the line. And our team went in, took a piece of construction paper and literally just wrote, "Hi, wait, you're up next," and put a little smiley face on it and slapped it on top of the red hand. That changed the customer's experience. There was a nook, a corner, where people waited to talk on the phone to the unemployment insurance office. I don't know how it is in the communities that you have been in, but particularly during the recession, people spend weeks trying to get through to the unemployment insurance office. And so there was a phone in every one stop, and people would literally sit around in a little area waiting to get their turn on the phone. No one would ever hang the phone up, they just hand it to the next person behind them in line. But they were just all sitting there. So our team put down pieces of paper that were just like job search planner for the week. What are you planning on doing this week? What are the resources that you need? Who are you going to talk to? There's a lot of research that says, particularly in the United Kingdom, that's very statistically valid, that says if people write down every day what they plan to do and then write down what they did, they get jobs faster. Not really sure why, similar to Weight Watchers maybe, where you're recording the food that you're eating, but just if you pay attention, to what you're doing, things happen better. They put down just like little worksheets that people could just use to start writing on. And then they put a whiteboard that said, write down your best tip for job hunting here. I mean, just to change the customer's experience. So here's the point. We can take the new law and you can go through it and say, okay, well, this is what we do now, this is what the law says we need to do. Okay, well, we can change this if we just change this just a little bit, then we'll be fine there. And, okay, well, this won't be too disruptive. Or we can actually take this, it's the Innovation and Opportunity Act. We can take the opportunity to innovate our services and do it together. And step back and say, let's think about the customers who are walking through our door. What do they need? How can we get it to them in a way that they need? I would imagine that there are people who are coming to you. I'll give you one more example. We all look at our customers through our own lens, right? So the current project we're doing with IDEO is about out-of-school youth, because the law changes what WIBs are required to do. The law used to say you have to spend 30% of your money on out-of-school youth, and now the law says you have to spend 70% of your money on out-of-school youth. That's a big shift for a lot of WIBs who have not worked with the out-of-school youth population. And if you talk to many of them, they say, we don't know where to find them, which I reply, then you're running a really crappy program, because if you're running a great program, out-of-school youth will be coming to you. So it's a big shift. So we have engaged IDEO to help us think through what out-of-school youth need in designing our programs. And they gave me and a couple of my staff a presentation on their work about a week ago. And so they showed a slide of a guy, 18 years old, and the quote from him was, I just copy my friend, I don't have a resume, I don't know how to write one, I just copy my friends. I just change my name from his, because I don't know how to write one. And my immediate reaction, I've been in the workforce system for 35 years, is, well, we can solve that, because we teach people how to write resumes. And the idea of people pushed back at me and said, wait a minute, the insight here is, this kid wants a job. He doesn't need to learn how to write a resume. The resume is only a tool to help him get a job. So why don't you guys just put together like 5 or 6 templates for young people who have very little work experience, who may or may not have graduated from high school. I mean, you know, there's only a certain number of circumstances that someone's in when they're 18 years old. Just give them a template. As he's doing it already, he's copying his friends. But my reaction was, from my experience, we do resume writing workshops. We already do that. And they pointed out to me that from his perspective, he didn't want to go to a workshop learning how to write a resume. He just wanted to have a piece of paper that he could use to hand to a prospective employer. I would suspect the same thing, and maybe this is heretical, but it's true for you. There may be people who come in to you and you say, well, you need a GED. Well, maybe they need a GED. Maybe they don't. I think there are probably lots of motivations for why people are trying to learn how to speak English. Sometimes it's because they want to get a job. Sometimes it's because they want to be able to talk to their children's teachers. Sometimes it's because they want to talk to their employer in a different way. But folks, we've got a new law, and the new law says that at the end of the day, we want everyone to have a job that can sustain themselves and their families. So the work that I think we need to do together, you don't need to learn to be job placement experts. You don't need to learn to understand all the labor marketing in your community, but you do need to learn how to work with your workforce partners in designing a continuum of services for your shared customer that will get them what they need. And at the end of the day, what we expect is, and hope, is that everyone is going to get a job. Now, some of the people you work with may already have jobs. Maybe that's fine. Maybe they really just need the English language skills. My sense has always been, we're going to have performance measures, and we're going to be measured. It's an odd mix. Performance measures drive performance. I mean, they work, right? But we need to give people what they need, and I think everyone in the United States of America should end up with a job that can help sustain themselves and their families. But we don't need to be so driven by performance measures that we stop working with people who are the most in need. So you get 98 instead of 99. I mean, it really is about putting the customer in the center and designing out from what they need to create a program around them that will work for them. You get what I'm saying? Am I making any sense? Is my obsession really crazy? Okay. So I'm thinking about things like, and frankly, I would say this. We have a lot of people in the workforce system, and I say this to them all the time, we have not invested in the skills of our own workers. We have lots of people in the one-stops, they don't know anything more about the local labor market than the people walking through the door. And it's not their fault, it's not that they're slackers, it's that we haven't invested in the skills of our own workers either. So this is also an opportunity to invest together in all of our skills. You're great teachers. Some of our folks are great career counselors. Some of us have come into the system, I don't know, how many of you, when you were 12, wanted to be what you are now? I mean, we have weird jobs, right? We always talk about career pathways. There are no career pathways in any of our jobs. I mean, if you look at mine, it's all, it's the long and winding road. It's all over the place. But we can start together to look at this field that we have of workforce development, which is skill building and getting people jobs, and together start designing from the customer out, and then designing for ourselves what are the skills that we need collectively in order to make great outcomes for our customers. So I'll make a pitch to wrap this up, and then I'll take some questions. We're actually, I sort of have done some stealth work in the Department of Labor to get my obsession into the regulations. And you will see customer-centered design written in a lot of documents that have been coming out of the Department of Labor. We're going to launch at the end of July training on how to do human-centered design. We call it customer-centered design at the Department of Labor because saying human-centered is like just a little too crazy. But there is a free online course, 7 weeks long. We want cross-functional teams of people in local communities and in states. So adult ed, book rehab, One Stop, TANF, to form teams, to take this class together. It's a class in which you actually have to work. You can't just watch a video. You have to watch a video, maybe read something, and then go out and practice what you're doing. And we're going to issue 3 challenges for all the teams, and each team can pick one of them. How might we design a one-stop with the customer in the center? How might we design our relationships with the business community with the business in the center? And how might we design an out-of-school youth program with the out-of-school youth in the center? We're going to issue those 3 challenges. People are going to work in teams, take this free online course for 7 weeks. We're going to have consultants act as coaches and convening conference calls with people who are working on these different challenges during those 7 weeks. Then we're going to give the teams 5 weeks to actually do something. Whether that's write a different kind of RFP, whether it's redesigning customer flow, whether it's redesigning physical space, whether it's writing a plan together for how you're going to work differently, whatever it is, something concrete, tangible. And then there's some criteria yet to be developed, but really soon. The teams that have actually gone through the class and then done something that's real are going to be invited to come back to the White House to do a learning exchange and a celebration of their work. The White House is very excited about this and really wants to encourage innovation in the Innovation Act. So I gave you the pitch, and now I've actually given you a way to participate. We'll be sending out information about this in a couple of weeks. So, Innovation and Opportunity Act, I think it's a huge opportunity. I think the stars are aligned in all sorts of ways. I think that at the end of the day, all of us have been in this business all of these years, not because of the stock options or the fabulous pay, but because we care about the people that we work with. And you all work with some of the most challenging populations around, people who need skills and in many cases have either come here from other countries and don't speak English at all, or people for whom schools have failed them. And so they've already felt like a failure once. And you work with them, and you help them succeed. So I think together, in this next year, we can design amazing programs that will help all of our shared customers get everything they need in order to help them move into the middle class, which after all is what the American Dream is all about. So thanks very much. We still have about 10 minutes. So questions? Yeah. Okay, the question is how will we be able to access that course? We're going to send out emails to all of our education partners are working with us on this whole class, this whole project. So I'm assuming whatever communication strategy that you guys have with the national office with people in DC, you'll get information. I don't know how that works. I'll send the information to Jane also, to get it out to all the conference attendees, and then you'll have to figure out in your own community how to register as a team. Other questions? Comments? Yes?
What it is, I work with the Department of Corrections and the rehabilitation, and again, the stigma, obviously, of trying to find jobs for our clients is that they're being incarcerated. I know that there's been a move by the federal government to provide opportunities. From your perspective, do Is that continuing or is it increasing?
Yes. So the question was, is there a move afoot to continue to focus on ex-offenders and people who come out of the correctional system? The answer is yes. Both we have special funds, grants that we issue through a competitive process on a regular basis. And also, we're just starting more generally, it's something that the Secretary is very passionate about. We're starting to look at programs that are good models. We saw a fantastic program in Indiana where, for example, the employer was committed to hiring a lot of ex-offenders and understood that sometimes when people are ex-offenders, they actually have to choose between satisfying the requirements of the correctional system or having a job. If you get a call from a parole officer saying, you need to come in and do a drug test in the next hour, that jeopardizes your job. So we're looking at models where employers are starting to be able to have it not be a fool's choice for someone who's just gotten out of prison to either have a job or comply with the rules of their parole officer. All right, looks like the next session is going to start. Thank you again, and we look forward to working with you.